a Florida Writer podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer podcast with your host, Alison Nissen, who is recovering from laryngitis. So you're going to have to bear with me today. And I am so lucky because I have Michell Levy here with me. And Mitchell is quite an inspirational writer. I am so excited for you to meet him. Mitchell, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
60 seconds. The clients I'm typically attracted to are coaches who've created a job, not a business. And what I write about is nonfiction. So I've written over 65 books. I've published as a book publisher over 750. And what I, just like you, in terms of you telling stories, that's what the book is, a story, but it's not about the story of the book. The story is, what is the author going to be using with the book? And so all the books that I have created have been books that have allowed me to be able to take the book and use it for something else. So I'll share this and I'm over 60 seconds. When I think about a book, I always think about what's the end result. And so when I know the end result and I have that in mind, then the stuff in the middle is the easy part. As a matter of fact, do you mind if I share one technique that people could use?
Please.
Okay. So if you're listening to this, take out a piece of paper. I mean, if you'd like to do it on your computer, you can. Take out a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil and just draw a black box in the middle of the page. Thank you. And then have a line going into the black box. And then have a line coming out of the black box. So the horizontal lines. And then on the left-hand side, you write input. And on the right-hand side, you write output. Okay, here's what's really interesting. The way we most of the time go through life is we jump right into the black box. And we get lost because we don't know where we came from. We think we do, and we don't know where we're going. And so we scramble. So what I'd like you to think about, if there's a particular book you have in mind, is I want you to think about what's the output. You kind of know who your input is today, but by the way, that sometimes changes. What is the output that you want to create? And if you say, I want a great, compelling book that's an Amazon best-selling book that's going to sell a ton of copies, that is not a sufficient output. Okay. The output is, I want to create a book that will entertain this group, or I want to create a book that's going to get me into this company, or I want to create a book that's going to be supplement of something else. When you know the output, and then you know the input, by the way, based on the output, you may need to change the input a little bit. Then you could dive in the middle and figure out what's next. So the two books that you see there are both books that resulted or came after a TEDx talk. Right. So the first one I gave the talk, and that is this one right here, being seen and being heard as the thought leader. And I go, oh, I need to market my TEDx. The output was, I'm going to use this book that I create after I did the TEDx. I'm going to use this book to actually market the TEDx. The book Credibility Nation, I went on a Napoleon Hill journey 4 years ago, and I interviewed 500 thought leaders on credibility. And the book was I did a TEDx on it. By the way, for those that are interested, it's called We Are Losing Our Humanity, and I'm tired of watching it happen. It was the 28th most popular in 2021. So I did a TEDx, and I have a membership community, and I did the book. And so what you want to be thinking about with everything you do in life is you want to think about your inputs and outputs. Before you jump in the middle of the black box, think about your input and your output.
All right. I'm taking notes, which is why it took me a second to respond there. So, I'm reminded of being a lifeguard, right? So there's times when you're standing on one side of the pool and you see the other side of the pool, and that's where you need to be. And so it's the matter of making that plan and how to get to that other side, because that's where you need to be. So as a lifeguard, you could walk around, you could swim around. That's about it. I don't think there's any, I guess maybe there's a bridge, you could maybe walk over it. But it's getting to that other side. And that is so true. But this works for fiction and nonfiction, because if you take your audience, right, if your primary genre is romance, you know what your audience wants, right? They want romance. And even though there's a formula that can get you to the end result, which is a successful romantic comedy, drama, whatever type of romance you write, you just need to think about the steps you're going to take to get there. So focusing on that end result, on that output, before you focus on anything else, really will help guide your decisions.
It's your compass.
It's your compass. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about credibility. Sounds like you're a master at it. How can authors ensure that they come across as credible as writers, but also as speakers and marketers? Because every time they publish a book, they need to meet their audience somewhere. And so they want to come off as credible. So what's the basic, what should you start with?
First, we'll give you a quick definition. Credibility is the quality in which you are trusted, known, and liked. Right? So those three elements, trust, know, and like, they actually have, and you could Google me and see all this anywhere. There's 10 values associated with credibility, and trust comes first, right? And so what happens when you're looking at trust, it's elements like vulnerability, integrity, authenticity, coachability, right? Even though you're the author of a particular topic, that doesn't mean you are the one and only expert. You are an expert. You're sharing this with other people. And if somebody comes by and gives you a great suggestion, when you are public and you go, oh, yeah, I like your model better than mine, I'll take that going forward. So first thing you need to do in today's overcrowded world, in anything we do, is establish trust. And really quickly after that, they're going to want to get to know you. And as people are getting to know you, this is not the superfluous things that you think are what they want to hear. This is actually getting to know who you are, you being a servant leader, you having the intent and commitment to do the right thing. For you, that internal integrity that you have being strong. And then here's the final thing on being likable. It is very easy to be likable. There are two elements that came out of the likability. One is showing respect. And how do you show respect? Come early, come prepared, come with your heart. Right? Because that means you're there for the person that you're interested in. The other, which is interesting, is I coined a term called cred dust. And that's spreading other people's cred dust, sharing their ideas, thoughts, and actions. So when you're talking, you're not this, your idea most likely has been borrowed and shaped by so many other people. You sharing those, maybe potentially as part of your origin story. And you spreading cred dust and naming other people, that's going to help you be significant. That's going to help you not just, being trusted, not just as people get to know you, but it's going to make you a little bit more likable. And if you got a bunch of competitors, if everything else is equal, the person who's more well-liked is the one who's going to get the job.
Well, that is absolutely true. It's also who's going to get the book sale. Which is always the goal for writers. How do we get to that book sale? And so you've written a ton of books, which is quite incredible. What is your process for writing a book? I know it's different writing fiction and nonfiction, but we all have to sit down with those ideas. We have to create some sort of outline. Obviously, you're looking at the output, which is where you're starting from. But how then do you create the interior of that book?
So for me, I've always thought about, well, how do we make it easier for a writer? So remember, I'm going to say of the 750 plus books we've published, I've done a couple sort of fiction-like books, but most every book has been written by an author who wanted book credibility, right? And so where do you start? The first thing that's most important, as I mentioned, is the output, is is I have a concept for the title of the book. And often what happens, this is what I focus on in terms of clarity, and then I'll tell you my process right after that. Clarity is being able to articulate in less than 10 words who you serve and either the pain point you're addressing or pleasure point you're trying to reach. So one of the other terms I created is called CPOP, for customer point of possibility. So who's my customer? Like, who am I serving? And either what is their pain point or what is their pleasure point? And a lot of times when I work with authors, their CPOP or slight variant of their CPOP is the title of their book. So if you know who your target market is, you know your audience, and you know either the pain point you're going to help them resolve or the pleasure point you want them to reach, now you can look at an asset called a book and see, does this make sense? So for me, I think at the beginning, I did a couple of the traditional style books. I had a Prentice Hall imprint actually publish one of our books. That was the hardest thing. Working for a New York type publisher was crazy. And then I created different rules and different book types. So we have a series called 42 Rules. So I did a book in the 42 Rules series. 42 Rules series is 42 500-word articles. I have another series called the Think Aha series. That is comprised of 140 Twitter-sized quotes. And so what happens when you're taking a formulaic approach like that is you still want to make sure you're hitting the output. You still want to make sure. So each one of those, people can't just read 140 quotes. You need to break them into sections. Those sections or chapters are things that have a introduction. Sometimes they have a conclusion. They may have an image associated with it. What you want to do in each area is you want to progress the reader from the beginning to end so they can accomplish their goal, what they want. So my last book is Credible Nation, which is now 2 years old, which means it's been way too long since the next book I need to do. And I've been deploying actually much more than 2 years old. Ooh, sugar. I finished probably 3 years old. Oh, now it's really too old. Now I feel really bad. So what is the next book for me? It's along the lines of clarity. And what I need to do, so I'm going to just tell you the process. And by the way, since I'm saying this out loud, it's going to focus on clarity. And what I want to do is be able to say why the CPOP comes before the why. Right? Because we're taught by Simon Sinek that why is the most important. But what's important is if you are a credible human, the question becomes, who do you serve? And either what is their pain point or pleasure point? And so the next book I'm focusing on will be focused on, I'll be doing some fundamental research. So figure out who's done clarity work, who's focused on why, who's focused on no one's focused necessarily on the CPOP, but I'll take the work that I did with the 500 interviews. And what I'm going to do is create a structured approach for people to actually understand why is not first. And so the end result is when somebody's reading it, they go, I see your point of view, Mitchell. So that's my end goal, my end target is to actually completely change the paradigm. That's a huge goal. Right? When I look at some of my other books, like Being Seen and Being Heard as a Thought Leader, I did that as a result of doing a TEDx. But the real goal of that book was, somebody look at the book, they see the author, they go, I want to be seen as a thought leader. What do I need to do to hire you? Right? And so what's on the inside is enough compelling content, because you want to, what we've been taught in the past, that you never give your ideas away. You put them in the book, or you wait till you charge the big bucks on consulting or coaching. The answer is the more you could share with your audience on who you are and where you come from and what gets you excited, the more they're attracted to you in terms of who you are. And so that's what, to me, what a book is a phenomenal business card. I mean, once again, we're talking nonfiction. It's the phenomenal business card where people get to see you. And as they get to see you, they're like, I need to spend more time and energy. So we could say time, energy, and money, or time, money, energy with you.
Wow. That's really interesting. I like it. You're going to beat Simon Sinek to the punch of why. Why do you need a why?
It's the who what comes before Simon's why. Agreed. By the way,
I like
it becomes very easy when you're talking up front about you and why you do what you do today. Your why comes with an origin story, right? And what happens is who you serve and what it is that you're helping them serve. If you now look at that in context of your why, you know exactly the why makes so much more sense. Because, and then when you tell your story, because given you focus on storytelling, right? When you tell your story, when you know your seed pod and you understand your why, the story becomes really easy. Because you're now talking, we can craft, as you know this, you can craft your story in so many different ways. When you know who you serve and what pain point they're addressing, now when you craft your story, you're crafting a story that is in relation to, in this case, it's, oh, I know what my why is. It's because, you know, I there were a reason why I couldn't tell stories in the past, reason why I didn't do well at school in the past, right? Which is what your story turns out to be. And so it's really fascinating to me when you think about the world that way.
This is a great way for authors to be able to not just focus on their books, but to focus on their audience, because you want that credibility with your audience. Your audience wants to get to know you. And this is that, you know, many authors are self-described introverts, maybe even hermits sometimes. They would rather not associate with the public if they didn't have to. But, you know, you have to be out there in the sense that they trust you because they want more from you. And they will give more of themselves, which could be their money, right? Or their review. You know, that 5 minutes that they spend writing your review is everything to an author. When you're building that platform of trust, you're encouraging them to not only to like you, to want to join you on your journey, but they're also giving you their time. They're giving you the time that they took to read, giving you the time it took to write the review, possibly paying for your book to begin with. They're giving a lot of themselves. And so having that credibility with your audience is so valuable. And I do think it's one thing that we forget. I actually worked with an author one time, and he said he wrote this great book, and it was just like some other book out there. You know, he was like, I know who my audience is and all this stuff. And he's like, oh, really? Like, well, what do you like to read? What's your genre? He's like, oh, I don't read. I'm like, oh, okay. So right there, to me, his credibility as an author declined just a little bit because.
Well, I'm going to say a lot of it, because what happens if somebody says that, it implies that they're not coachable, that they have all the answers. And if you're not coachable, you're not credible.
Well, right. Boy, I never put it that way, but yes, 100%. I'm going to agree with you there. And okay, so what else is going on? So how could a fiction author become a thought leader?
Let's define what the word thought leader means, right?
Ooh, okay, let's go there.
Right? Because it's what happens a lot is there are these definitions out there, and we really focus on the world, and we assume that there's a common definition of thought leadership, and that means that the world knows this person, like you and I quoted Simon Sinek, like everyone knows them, right? Knows that guy. So thought leadership largely means that within the market you're serving, they know you. Now, typically, if you're a mom or a dad, your thought leadership is with your kids, right? If you're at a company, some of that thought leadership is implied. If you're a manager or a VP or director or or CEO, if you're a fiction writer, it's within the area of the audience you need to serve. And you could, if you're a horror writer, well, try to be more specific and try to focus on an audience, right? That really can gravitate around you and get excited about you. And so even before you write, you might want to consider, is there a organization, or that organization is probably the right word, or a website, or a blog? Is there somebody out there that's very famous? They have a lot of following that could be my awareness sponsor, right? Can actually let the world know a little bit more about me. And then by doing so, give me a little bit more credibility. If you even started your book thinking about that ahead of time, what are the 3, 4, or 5 places that I would like to actually be an awareness sponsor of mine? Well, that's going to help you think about, well, how would you adjust the storytelling you're telling that would appeal to those other places? And if you begin with the end in mind, so once again, we're going to the output, and we're going to, well, we have a story to tell, your expertise. And so the story can be told in so many different ways. Well, if you actually tell the story in such a way where you're attracting those awareness sponsors for you, and of course, there are many different ways to get them involved at different points in time, depending on who you're talking to. It gets really powerful. And that would be my biggest suggestion, is you want to start off at the beginning with your awareness sponsors in mind before you start writing.
Wow. Michell Levy, this has been so much fun. I have learned so much right now, just in this very short amount of time. How can people learn more about you? How can they get in touch?
The easiest is my website, mitchelllevy.com. So that actually represents 3 L's in the middle, right? So mitchelllevy.com. And there, it's one of the things I've got. We have a new, relatively new Clarity certification program. But anything you would need in terms of the things I'm looking at, you can get to. And for those who said, hey, I got to talk to Mitchell, access to my calendar is through the contact side as well. So mitchelllevy.com.
Well, fantastic. Mitchell, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Sure.
Can you think of a favorite conference you've ever attended?
I'm trying my best. I'm going back to in the old days, Comdex during the .com days was some of my favorite conferences, and seeing Bill Gates speak live. Yeah. Old days, .com days. There was a conference company called Comdex. They're now out of business. And they were the place that all companies were going to. That was still even think about things I do today. That's still my favorite.
Would you rather visit the mountain or the beach?
Depends on the day. If I'm with my wife, it's the beach. If I'm with my son, it's the mountain.
Perfect answer. And would you ever take a trip to the moon?
Oh, in a heartbeat.
Well, Michell Levy, thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, it was so much fun to get to know you a little bit beforehand and to share this with your audience. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Alison Nissen. Alison out. Ooh. Okay, normally I go, ooh, and I have this big whoosh sound, but I can't do it today. So, all right, guys, see you next time.
See ya.
Global credibility expert Michell Levy is a 2-time TEDx speaker, an international best-selling author of over 60 books, and an executive coach at Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches. After interviewing 500 thought leaders on credibility, he published a 7-country international best-selling book, delivered a powerful TEDx on humanity, created courses, and created the Credibility Nation membership community to help those live, learn, and surround themselves with others on the credibility journey. For more information about Michell Levy, visit him at mitchelllevy.com. For more information about the Florida Writers Association, visit us at floridawriters.org. Until next time.